It was a perfect autumn evening in Maplewood, a quiet little town surrounded by endless woods. Alex and his wife Sarah had just moved into a charming old Victorian house on Ashwood Lane. It was everything they'd dreamed of: a wraparound porch, a massive garden, and a cozy, warm interior that smelled of aged wood and cinnamon from the candles Sarah loved to burn. After years of living in cramped apartments and enduring endless city noise, they finally had space to breathe. But as the sun set and shadows grew long, the house began to reveal its secrets. Strange noises echoed through the halls, and the flickering candlelight cast eerie reflections in the windows. An old family portrait seemed to watch them, and the air grew thick with an unsettling presence. The day they moved in, the autumn air was crisp, and golden leaves crunched underfoot as neighbors stopped by to introduce themselves. Sarah baked a batch of cookies, Alex uncorked a bottle of wine, and together they toasted to their fresh start. Alex, to our forever home. Later that evening, as they unpacked boxes in the study, Sarah opened the drawer of an antique desk left by the previous owners. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its cover worn and cracked with age. She flipped through the pages, finding elegant handwriting that filled each page with detailed entries from a woman named Eliza. "Sarah, it's so old. She wrote about her life in this house." She read a few cheerful passages aloud, and they both laughed at how similar Eliza's thoughts were to their own. But as the evening went on, they set the journal aside, focusing on making the house feel like home. The house, with its creaky floors and old charm, welcomed them warmly. They felt an immediate connection, as if the house had been waiting just for them. The view from the window, the scent of the old wood, everything felt perfect. It was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, filled with hope and promise. A week later, Sarah returned to the journal during a quiet afternoon. The first entries described Eliza's happiness in the house, her love for her husband, and her fondness for the neighborhood. But about halfway through, the tone shifted. October 15th, 1972. The house feels different at night. I keep hearing whispers, faint but clear, like someone standing just behind me. I told John, but he said I was imagining things. I know what I heard. The entry sent a chill down Sarah's spine, but she shook it off. It was just a story, she told herself. Probably an old habit of journaling her fears. But then, strange things began to happen around the house. Lights flickered without reason, and objects seemed to move on their own. Sarah found scratches on the walls, as if made by unseen hands. She heard footsteps echoing in the hallways at night, but no one was there. The journal seemed to come alive, its pages flipping on their own. Sarah clutched the journal tightly, her hands trembling with fear. That night, Sarah woke suddenly. She wasn't sure why, but her heart was racing. The room was silent except for Alex's soft breathing beside her. Then she heard it, a faint whisper, so quiet she almost thought it was her imagination. Whisper, "Sarah." She sat bolt upright, clutching the blanket. Her eyes scanned the room, but nothing was there. She told herself it must have been a dream, but the next morning she couldn't shake the unease. As she walked down the hallway, the lights flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows. Strange noises echoed through the house, and a door creaked open slowly, as if pushed by an unseen hand. She felt a sudden chill, the air around her turning icy cold, and she could see her breath in the dim light. In the corner of the room, she found a mysterious object, an old, dusty book that seemed out of place. As she opened it, the pages began to turn by themselves, revealing cryptic symbols and eerie illustrations. The whispers became more frequent. Sometimes they came from the hallway, other times from the corner of the room. They were faint but unmistakable, like a voice carried on the wind. "You've been working too hard on the house," Alex had said, but Sarah knew what she'd heard. One evening, as she was washing dishes, she felt a cold breath on her neck. She spun around, her heart pounding, but the kitchen was empty. She went back to the journal. October 25th, 1972. "The whispers are louder now. They follow me everywhere. I saw something in the mirror today, a shadow that wasn't mine." Sarah closed the journal, her hands trembling. She decided not to tell Alex. He'd only say she was letting the journal get to her. That night the whispers grew louder, echoing through the house. Sarah felt a presence behind her, a chill running down her spine. She knew she wasn't alone. But the next night, something happened that even Alex couldn't explain. As they sat in the living room, the lights began to flicker. The fireplace dimmed and the temperature plummeted. A low, guttural voice echoed through the room. "Get out!" the voice said. "You heard that too, didn't you?" Alex asked. Sarah nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Suddenly, a shadowy figure moved in the background. Objects began to levitate. Books flew off the shelves and furniture moved on its own. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, its hands moving erratically. A mirror shattered, its shards reflecting a distorted image. They screamed in terror, covering their ears as the voice grew louder. Desperate for answers, Alex and Sarah researched the house's history. They discovered that Emily had vanished without a trace in 1972, and her husband Thomas was found dead in the basement a week later. The house had been sold repeatedly since then, each new family leaving after experiencing unexplained events. Sarah was determined to leave, but the house seemed to have other plans. That night, as they packed, the whispers turned into screams. The walls groaned as though alive, and dark shadows slithered along the floor. Lights flickered violently, revealing ghostly figures in mirrors, and bloodstains appeared on the walls as objects moved on their own. Terrified, they saw hands reaching out from the shadows, and an eerie fog filled the room. When Alex went to the basement to grab a box, he didn't come back. Sarah called out for him, her voice shaking. She descended the stairs and found him standing in the corner, facing the wall. "Alex?" He turned slowly, his eyes wide with terror. "Alex, it won't let us leave," he said in a voice that wasn't his. The shadow appeared then, a towering, writhing mass of darkness with hollow, glowing eyes. It lunged toward Sarah, who screamed and bolted up the stairs, dragging Alex behind her. She slammed the door shut, her heart pounding, and leaned against it, panting. Alex sat on the floor, his face haunted by what he had seen. Sarah held him close, whispering that they would find a way out. The lights flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, its hands moving erratically as if possessed. Sarah heard whispers, unintelligible and chilling, echoing through the house. A dark figure stood at the end of the hallway, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. They huddled together, their eyes darting around, knowing the house was alive with malevolent energy. They made it to the front door, but as Sarah reached for the handle, she felt icy fingers wrap around her wrist. The shadow whispered in her ear, "You belong to me now." In a surge of adrenaline, Alex yanked her free, and they tumbled out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and the house went eerily silent. A ghostly figure appeared in the window, and the lights inside began to flicker ominously. Shadows moved through the house as Alex and Sarah looked back in terror. Alex and Sarah never returned, abandoning everything they owned. The house stood silent, but not empty. Months later, the house remained empty, its windows dark and lifeless. But the "for sale" sign on the lawn attracted new attention. A young family, Liza, John, and their curious 8-year-old daughter Lily, visited the property with a smiling realtor. It's a historic gem, the realtor chirped as they walked through the halls. Old world charm with modern potential. Liza admired the high ceilings, John marveled at the spacious yard, and Lily wandered off, drawn to the study. "Mom, Dad!" Lily's voice called from the other room. "Look what I found!" They followed her into the study and saw her holding a worn, leather-bound journal. Liza took it gently from her hands, flipping it open. The first entry caught her attention. "I love this house. It's everything I've ever wanted." She smiled. "It must be from the last owners. How sweet." John glanced over her shoulder. "Creepy, if you ask me," he muttered. Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mom, there's someone upstairs." Liza froze. "What do you mean, sweetie? There's no one else here." "But I saw her," Lily insisted, pointing toward the staircase. "She waved at me and said, 'Welcome home.'" Liza and John exchanged uneasy glances. The realtor laughed nervously. "Kids and their imaginations, huh?" As the family moved in, the camera lingers on the journal, now lying open on the desk. The ink on the page shifts, forming new words before fading. It begins again. From the corner of the room, a shadow stretches, long and unnatural, reaching toward the family as they unpack, unseen by any of them. Fade to black. Whispering voiceover, "Welcome back."